Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what I think will be the most hyped and watched season in college football history. Why? Why, you might ask? Well, there's a new video game out. The College Football 25 video game is absolutely massive, so people are going to be getting into it because of that. There's new conferences. The SEC is massive. The Big Ten's massive. The Big 12 even has a ton of teams, too. And the new playoff format is, I think, really what a lot of people are going to want to see, because for the longest time, it was one team would win the national title, and they had the BCS where they had two teams, and then eventually they made the playoff, which was four teams. It's now 12. So I think that's going to make this season very interesting. It's honestly just like a big, massive experiment, if we're being completely honest, but I'm basically just going to preview who I think the playoff teams are going to be and just give you my season-long predictions. However, we pretend you didn't see that. We need to talk about something first, however. What is this? Hold on, I didn't even move my camera. What is this? What is this? Florida State just lost to Georgia Tech in Ireland as a top 10 team. And what did Georgia Tech do last year? They were like barely even 500. Did they even make a bowl game? I don't even know. But they walked into Dublin and took care of business against Florida State. I mean, they ran the ball. DJ Uiagalelei did not look great. I mean, 19 of 27, 193 yards. This Haynes guy on Georgia Tech was running wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted, 2 touchdowns. I'm telling you right now, I don't think Florida State's making the playoff. I don't think they're one of the 12 teams that's going to get in. They did not look like it here. They have a hard schedule too. They still have to play Notre Dame. They still have to play Miami. They potentially have to play Clemson. I don't think that Florida State is going to be one of those teams you see in the playoff. This is a bad loss, and I know that there's 12 teams that could get in. But I mean, yeah, they got to play Clemson. At Duke won't be easy. Look at this stretch. This is a 5-game stretch of Clemson, at Duke, at Miami, North Carolina, at Notre Dame. You're telling me they're not going to lose at least 2 of those? Still got to play Florida at the end of the year? Florida State, you're in a heap of trouble, and week 1 hasn't even started yet. Okay, now, the teams that I think are going to make the college football playoff. Here is my bracket. Here are the teams that I think that are going to get in. Obviously, I think Georgia's pretty self-explanatory. They're obviously, I think, the number 1 team. It's either them or Ohio State, who's going to be the number 1 overall team at year's end. They're the 2 best teams from the 2 best conferences. They are both immensely talented. I just think that's what's going to happen. I think Georgia's going to win the SEC, and Ohio State. I think you can basically just reserve these top 2 teams to whoever wins the SEC and the Big Ten, and those are the teams that I think will end up getting it done. Now, the other 2 spots, if you're unfamiliar, are there are 5 conference winners that get in. Obviously, the 4 Power 4, and then there's 1 non-Power 4. It's weird to say Power 4. I'm so used to saying Power 5. Rest in peace, Pac-12. But yeah. So these spots are basically going to be reserved for ACC and Big 12. I think the ACC. Honestly, I was going to pick Florida State to win the ACC, but now I think it's Clemson. I mean, and I don't even like that, to be completely honest with you. They play Georgia week 1, which won't be easy, but I mean, after that, they don't really have a very hard schedule. They play at Florida State, which should be tough, which should be a tough game. They got to play Appalachian State. They're always a tough team. But I mean, if you're not going to pick Florida State, which from what I saw today, there's no way. It's either Clemson or Miami, and I don't think Miami, they always fold. They always fold. Like, Miami has a really easy schedule. They do play Florida week 1, which will be tough. I don't know if they'll win that one. They're favored by 2.5, maybe. But then it's pretty easy after that. But you know that they're going to lose a game they're not supposed to. You know they're going to, lose at Cal or something. Or, the only ranked team they play is Florida State. But you know they're going to lose some games they're not supposed to. I don't think Miami's going to be good enough to make it. And honestly, of the rest of the teams, I have the Group of 5 team, which is Liberty. And then I have all Big Ten SEC, other than one, which is Utah. Because I think Utah is still going to be really good. I think it's I think Kansas State and Utah are the two best teams in the Big 12. Let's talk about Kansas State for a second. I think they're going to be a very strong team. They have a lot of talent on their team. They got that really good quarterback. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I know his name. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank, but they're a really good team. I don't know. I think they've had some good years in the past. They don't really. And here's another thing: with all these teams in so many different conferences, with all these teams in one conference, I feel like it's partially going to come down to how easy is your schedule, because not all conference schedules are going to be made equally now. Kansas State, at least from the preseason rankings, they don't play any ranked teams on the road. They got at Iowa State, at Colorado, at BYU. And then the ranked teams they play, they get Arizona at home, they get Oklahoma State at home, and they get Kansas at home. I think they have the easiest schedule of the Big 12 teams. I think it's going to be between them and Utah. Now, the representative of the non-Power 5, I'm going to go with Liberty. Now, there's a lot of options you could pick from here. I've seen some people take Memphis. I've seen some Boise State in there from people that have been making picks. Liberty, their schedule is ridiculously easy. Listen to their schedule. Campbell, New Mexico State, UTEP, East Carolina, at App State will be tough. FIU, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State, Middle Tennessee State, UMass, Western Kentucky, Sam Houston State. Where's the loss? I think the only loss you can maybe even give them is Appalachian State. So I think it's going to be really hard. I think if a group of 5 team goes undefeated, I think they're going to get in. I just think that's what's going to happen. So I have them as the non-Power 5 conference champion that gets in. So now the other teams. Starting at 5, I have Texas. I think they're the next best team in the SEC besides Georgia. They made the playoff last year, and they're basically running it back without a few of their receivers, but they still have Quinn Ewers, who's amazing. They got Isaiah Bond as a transfer from Alabama. I mean, they got to go at Michigan, but Michigan lost their whole team pretty much. Michigan has 4 returning starters. Their new quarterback, Alex Orji, I think will be a pretty good player, but like I said, the only really losses I could even see on Texas's schedule, I think they beat Michigan. Texas versus Oklahoma is obviously going to be a great game. Georgia at Texas. I don't know. They could beat Georgia at home, but that's going to be tough. But after that, they play Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Do we think any of those teams are going to beat Texas? I don't think so. I think the only 2 games that could be losses are Oklahoma and Georgia, and they have both of those games back-to-back. So I think as long as they win one of those 2, they'll make the SEC title. And they could win it, but here's what I think will eventually. I think they will beat Georgia at home, but then Georgia will beat them in the SEC title. That's what I think is going to happen in the SEC. At 6, I have Oregon. I'm honestly not that high on them as compared to some other people. A lot of people think they're just as good as Georgia and Alabama. I think that's a little crazy to say. I think they're definitely a step below those teams. But, you look at their schedule. Their out-of-conference games are Idaho, Boise State. I'm glad they're playing Oregon State. That could be a tough game just because Oregon State, that's the only game in their schedule that matters. What's Oregon State playing in? Aren't they playing in the Mountain West this year or something? I don't know. Is it really just them and Washington State in the past? I don't even know. But, yeah. So Oregon State's schedule, it's just Pac-12. It's just Mountain West teams. So, I don't know, but that could be a tough game for Oregon. And then UCLA, Michigan State. They do get Ohio State at home, which will be a great game. Purdue, Illinois, Michigan on the road will be tough. Maryland, Wisconsin, and then Washington at the end of the year. The only games that I think could be losses are obviously Ohio State and then Michigan. At Michigan, they could lose. Other than that, I think they win all these other games. But, I don't know. I think they will end up losing a game they shouldn't. At Purdue wouldn't shock me. At Wisconsin wouldn't shock me. It's gonna be interesting, but I think they will ultimately make the Big Ten title and lose to Ohio State. Similar to the Texas and Georgia scenario, I think Oregon will beat Ohio State at home. That could be a matchup of 1 versus 2, potentially. I think they will beat Ohio State in Eugene, and then if they play in the Big Ten title, I think Ohio State will beat them. So I have them at 6. At 7, I have Ole Miss. And this is a team that a lot of people are very high on this year, myself included. They have Jackson Dart back for his 8th year of college football. And the schedule doesn't look overly difficult. They have 3 cupcake games out of conference: Furman, Middle Tennessee, and Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern. Then they have Kentucky, South Carolina. Those should be wins. At LSU, I don't know, night game in Death Valley, that might be a loss. But then they play Oklahoma at home, Arkansas. They get Georgia at home, and then their last 2 games are Florida and Mississippi State. I think they could definitely finish with 1 loss. Even if they, let's say they lose to Georgia and LSU, I think a 2-loss Ole Miss is still getting in. They're a very talented team. They very well could be heading to, I think, what would be their first SEC title game ever, potentially. I think ultimately what it's going to come down to, they got to win either at Ole Miss or home against Georgia. They got to win one of those 2. But even if they lose both, I think they still get in. At number 8, I have Penn State. So now, Penn State I have a pretty big dilemma with because they're always a good team. They're never good enough to make it, though. But now with 12 teams, it's a little different. And also, playing Michigan and Ohio State every year kind of killed them. They don't have to play Michigan this year, and they get Ohio State at home. So they very well could win that game. And other than that, the only other hard games I think they have are at USC, at Wisconsin. I don't think Wisconsin will be that great this year. I think they can win that. And I don't think USC will be that great either. I think they can win that too. They do play at West Virginia week 1, but I think they can win that. Like, all 3, here's the thing. At West Virginia, at USC, at Wisconsin. I think if they win 2 of those 3, they'll be okay. And then they could potentially lose to Ohio State. They would be 10-2, and I think they get in. I think a 10-2 Penn State could definitely get in. Now, Alabama is who I have next. Now, they have a pretty tough schedule. They also, like Penn State, have to go at Wisconsin, which that's going to be interesting. An SEC team coming on the road to Big Ten country. Then they do play Georgia, and then they're also at Tennessee and at LSU and at Oklahoma. So they also have a tough schedule, but this is one of those things where obviously, like, they're ranked 5th in the preseason poll, but I don't think they're that good. I think they're still pretty good. But they have a really tough schedule compared to all these other teams. Like, they play Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, who's going to be a really good team. At LSU is always going to be tough. At Oklahoma, like, they're Alabama, so I think they're going to find a way. Even though they don't even have Nick, I don't know. They could very well lose 4 games and not even make the playoff. Because they don't have Nick Saban. They have a new coach this year, who's a really good coach. They got Washington's old coach. I don't know. It's going to be tough, but I think ultimately, I mean, they're Alabama. I think they'll make it. They're ranked 5th in the preseason for a reason. Next, I have Utah, the only other non-Big Ten or SEC team I have. And they also, like Kansas State, have a very favorable schedule. Southern Utah, Baylor, Utah State. At Oklahoma State will be tough. But then they got Arizona, Arizona State, TCU, Houston, BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, UCF. Like, I think they finished the regular season with, like, 1 loss. And then I think they play Kansas State in the Big 12 title. I think Kansas State and Utah will both end up meeting in the Big 12 title with either 1 or 0 losses. And the winner's going to get that bye, and I think the loser will still end up getting in. So I have Utah at that 10 spot. At 11, we're going to talk about Liberty. So the last team I have is Missouri. Now, Missouri, I think, is a very big wild card because they had an amazing season last year. They finished 10-2. They beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. It was the best season they've had in a very long time. And they return almost their entire team. They have Luther Burden, who is the best receiver in college football. If you haven't seen him play, that guy is absolutely phenomenal. And the schedule's shaping out very easy for them. The only game that I think is really going to be really tough is they do play at Alabama. But other than that, Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, they do play Vanderbilt. At Texas A&M could be tough, but I think they're definitely a more talented team than A&M. UMass, Auburn, Oklahoma they get at home, and then they end the season South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. I think they very well could finish with 1 or 2 losses, and they definitely can make it. Now, the thing is, though, is this is a team that's not really used to having expectations, like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, Penn State. These are all teams that have expectations year in, year out. and they normally rise to the occasion. Missouri's not really used to having that high of expectations, so they could crumble under them. We've seen teams like that. Like, I remember Indiana was ranked 15 or something to start the year, and then they finished 2-10. Like, it's very, very interesting what could happen to Missouri, but I think they're up to the challenge. I think they get in. Okay, so now let's make some picks. Now these playoff games are going to be on-site playoff. Like, the higher seed's going to host, and that's going to be so electric. I'm so excited for that. First, we have Alabama at Penn State. Now, I think Penn State would win just solely because that atmosphere would be unreal. Absolutely unreal. You're telling me Penn State playing Alabama at home in a playoff game? Like, if this was a Nick Saban coached Alabama team, I think they'd be up to the task. I don't know. I don't think Bama's going to be that great this year. I think if Penn State gets the home field, they win. I think they definitely, could have a very good team. Texas and Liberty, I think this is going to be a blowout. I really hope that, because I love the fact that they're having the lower rated team, the lower conference team get in. I love that they have that. I'm worried, though, that it's just going to always be a blowout. Because, like, is Liberty winning at Texas? No, they're not. I just hope that game doesn't become a blowout every single time. And they're like, oh, this is so stupid that the 12th team gets in. I hope that team can eventually win a game. Like, I remember that UCF team that beat Auburn and went undefeated and they claimed a national title. That team could probably have won a playoff game. I hope we see something like that. But I don't think Liberty's going to beat Texas. Utah and Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss would win this one at home. I'm going to take all the home teams. But, because you got to think, these atmospheres are going to be absolutely electric. So, it's going to be really hard to win. So, that's what I have. I mean, I think Utah could definitely win this game, potentially. I think Missouri could potentially win this game. Because those are two great teams. But, I mean, when in doubt, I think you got to pick the higher-rated team. Now, this next round is going to be in neutral site bowl games, which I think is going to be very cool. I'm going to take Georgia over Penn State. I mean, I don't think Penn State's going to beat Georgia. I'm taking Texas over Clemson. I think that they. I don't think Clemson really. I mean, honestly, I think the ACC is getting one bid. I think they are. I don't see more than one ACC team getting in, and I don't even think the team that's going to win the ACC is going to be that great. So I'm going to take Clemson by default to make that spot, but I think Texas definitely beats them. Then we have Ohio State. We have Ohio State and Ole Miss, and for the fun of it, I'm going to take Ole Miss. I think they definitely could win this game. They obviously have a great offense. Their defense, though, has made strides in the last couple of years. And they're bringing everyone back from a team that was very highly ranked last year. I just don't want to have Ohio, because I think Oregon beats Kansas State. I don't want to have Ohio State, Oregon round 3. I think that would be stupid and lame. So we have 1, 5, 6, and 7 in the final 4. Now, what I said I think is going to happen, I think Texas beats Georgia at home. Georgia beats them in the ACC title. Round 3. Ooh, who do we have? I don't know. I think it's Georgia. I think they're mad after getting left out of the playoff last year. And I think they're just a team to be reckoned with. And I don't think you want to come across them this year. I think they're a team on a mission. And then Oregon, Ole Miss. Ooh, that's a fun one. That's a very fun matchup. I'm telling you, I'm not that big of a believer in Oregon. I know I have them making the Final Four, but like the people that have them ranked like 3rd in the preseason, I think that's crazy. I think, honestly, on paper, I think Ole Miss is better. Like, I think Oregon's good enough to beat Missouri at home, and I think they're good enough to beat Kansas, but taking Ole Miss, that might be crazy, but I have a matchup of 1 versus 7 in the national title. And I think now here's the thing. Ole Miss gets Georgia at home in the middle of the year. I think Ole Miss could beat Georgia at home. If Ole Miss beats Georgia at home, they're not beating them again. I think Georgia's going to win the national title. I think that they're going to be an extremely hard team to beat. And yeah, those are my picks. You love them or hate them. I mean, that's what they are. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys are ready for this college football season. I'm going to be doing weekly picks, so Stay tuned for those. Have a great college football season, everybody.